Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're having another Winsor Newton painting class today. I'm going to just jump right in. I'm Jeannie Breedy, and I want to welcome everyone to today's class that Shalene will be painting a protea. So we're going to move a little swiftly because it's a little bit more detailed, but needless to say, we're going to record it and we want you to all enjoy it. So let's just jump right in with Shalene.
All right. Hello, everybody. How is my audio? Can you hear me good?
All good.
All right. I'm so excited for this one. This is going to be fun. We're painting a Protea. And I was telling Jeannie before we started that I thought this was an Australian flower, but it is actually South African. So that's cool. So we're going to start with a sketch. I'm going to walk you through how I sketch it freehand. But if you're kind of intimidated by sketching it, there's a lot going on in this painting or in this sketch painting. Pull it up on your computer and then go to either a closet or your bathroom, somewhere dark, and put your watercolor paper over your computer and trace it really quick, okay? But I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my best to show you how I sketch it. And if we can switch to the overhead view, I'm going to talk through some supplies and then we're going to get right into it. So let's see here, where to start. All right, let's talk brushes. I'm going to use today a size 6 and a size 3 round brush. These are Cotman Winsor & Newton brushes. Okay, so we got a big brush and a small brush today. If you've got 2 brushes that are similar in size, that's fine. We're going to be using Winsor Newton Cotman paints. I have the pocket palette set here. This is the Sketchers set, but I'm actually going to be using tube paints today. So I squeezed them onto my palette over here. And I'm using, let's see here, we got some Winsor & Newton. This is cold press paper. This sheet here is about 6 by 10. I actually tore it in half. So let's see, let's start with a sketch here. I'm going to use just a number 2 pencil. I got a little eraser nub here for mistakes, which I always make. And I'm going to just trace this. I got this in frame, my reference. As I mentioned, you can hold it up to your computer and sketch it, or you can even hold this up to a window and then hold your paper over it. If it's daytime, you should be able to see that sketch or see the sketch through the paper fairly well. So, all right, so here we go. I'm going to just start by kind of getting the loose shape of my Protea. I just kind of want to get it placed on the paper before I start drawing any dark lines. It's kind of the shape of a potato. So kind of defining how far out I want to go to the right and left, how high up I want to go up to the top. And I'm going to start from the bottom here. So I'm going to start with the stem. And then I'm just going to kind of work, just starting this first leaf here. And notice that Protea leaves are kind of round. They don't really have a sharp point. Kind of have that nice soft tip. And my tip for you as you're sketching the leaves is make sure you draw the little veins coming up through the leaves. That's going to help us differentiate leaves from petals later on, because we don't want to mess those two up while we're painting. So just while you're sketching, just be mindful of drawing those little veins. I am not trying to make mine perfect or just like my reference, because that's kind of impossible when you're doing it freehand. I would also say that if you're kind of a beginner and you really would like to try this freehand, I think that's awesome, and you definitely should. It's a great exercise, but maybe just do fewer leaves, because there's like 20. I did a lot. This was a painting from my sketchbook. So I had initially drawn it, not really with the intention of teaching how to draw it, or how to paint it, but I kind of just did as many leaves as I felt comfortable with. And there's a lot. So.
Hey, Shalene, as you're sketching along, I've kind of been keeping up on the chat, and
Mhm.
quite a few people, we hope that you sketched ahead of time so you can relax a little bit. But as she mentioned,
Mhm.
reducing the number of leaves is probably the quickest time saver that we're going to ask you to do today. You could always go back and add to this creation at a later time or watch it at a later date. But someone suggested, asked about using carbon paper, and I'm not quite sure if that would give us the result that we're looking for in terms of sketching. Um, would you agree?
So is carbon paper, forgive me for not knowing what that is. Is that sketching paper? Is that what that is?
I'm not sure, so I'm going to ask the person
Yeah.
that. 'Cause I said
I'm like,
sketching paper is
I should
cool, but
know
when I
this.
think I might be dating myself when I think of carbon paper. Oh, she's saying it's graphite paper.
Graphite paper. Okay, yeah. Well, so I wouldn't do anything besides watercolor paper.
Yeah.
Just because once we start getting to painting, trust me, only watercolor paper is really going to work for what we're doing today.
Right.
Um, so yeah,
But
I know it's tricky because it's really thick and it is a little bit harder to trace.
what they're
But
saying is just so like it's basically the paper that you put on top, because I say I'm
mhm.
dating myself, because in the day we'd use those carbon to
Yeah.
imprint and copy. So, as long as it's just, I'm sure it'll work, because if it's graphite, it'll come out dark, because the whole point
Mhm.
was that you want a very light sketching. So it doesn't
Yes.
interfere with the actual watercolor painting. You want to blend.
Yes, exactly. Um, yeah, watercolor really is just the best medium for what we're doing today. But I do have sketching paper, or what do you call it? I just said what it was called. But yeah, that like really thin kind of filmy paper. I use it for some things, but trust me, guys, the going to the bathroom or going to a dark closet to trace over your computer is like the best, the best little hack. I do it all the time.
I thought that was fantastic, because I'm thinking,
Yeah.
how am I going to emulate this? Because I haven't taken this
Yeah.
project on yet, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah, people are
Hmm.
giving each other great chatter going on. Thank you, everyone, for helping out, giving everybody else suggestions about which way, how they sketch things, light boxes,
Hmm.
windows,
Yeah,
tracing
light
paper.
boxes.
Yeah, everybody's really
So
jumping.
your computer kind of works as a light box. So that's kind of the way I use it. It's just, I mean, and it's maybe not the safest thing to just like take a sharp pencil to your computer.
Yeah,
But I mean, I kind of just think, I'm like, well, the watercolor paper is thick, it's protecting it. It's fine.
it's all good.
I don't
Yeah.
take good care of my electronics. So.
Well, one other thing that I want to remark on is that, originally when we did the supply list, we added 4 colors,
Hmm.
but today we're only going to use 3: the
Yes.
Viridian green, alizarin crimson, and burnt sienna.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a really simplified palette, but you're going to get really lovely results.
Yes. That was my bad, you guys. I'm sorry. I hope you didn't buy like $50 worth of yellow ochre.
But
But
you do use yellow ochre quite a
oh,
bit.
I
So
use
for
it
those
all
of
the
you that have
time. Yeah.
participated in our classes, it will
Yes.
not go to waste, because Shalene is scheduled. So I'm going to just let everybody know we have scheduled classes out through pretty much April already. So we're
Hmm.
really excited. This is our typical Tuesday time slot for our brands that we have Winsor Newton. We're doing a lot of our watercolor on this time, but we also are going to be testing out other time slots. So we will give you some updates on that as we get closer to those dates for Shalene. But
Hmm.
she's going to give you some sneak peeks at the end of the class to show
Yes.
you what's upcoming. So looking forward to everyone joining and spread the word. And then when we're done with all this lovely painting, we have the hashtags posted that we would love for you to share your creations with us at hashtag Make It With Michaels, hashtag Michaels Classes. And then obviously Shalene loves you. I know many of you already follow her, but just stay engaged with Shalene. And she has her Instagram at Shalene Louise.
Hmm.
And I think we've got everybody covered.
Cool. I love it. Okay, so you guys, I jumped to the flower petals, as you can tell. And remember what I said about how I drew like the little vein lines in the leaves? That way, as I'm switching over to paints in a few minutes here, I'll know which ones to paint green and which ones to paint pink. And you might have noticed as I was sketching, I do a lot of erasing and kind of editing as I go, especially if I'm drawing freehand. I very rarely get it right the first time. I usually have to do some erasing and some adjusting. So don't be afraid to use that eraser generously. So I'm working on these petals around the back side of this little center area. I'm going to call this center area the stamen. So I'm working on the petals that are just behind it. Kind of look like little shark teeth. Okay, so I'm going to take a second here, just do inventory, just look at it, see what I want to change, if anything. My sketch is larger than my reference, which is good for you because you'll be able to see it a little bit better. But that means I have to paint even faster. So, and I had mentioned earlier, if you're feeling intimidated, you can make your sketch a little bit more simple, just use less leaves. And as we're working, if you're feeling like you're getting left behind, just maybe work on just this part of it. Maybe just kind of follow along, just some of the leaves, some of the stamen, some of the petals. And then maybe after the class, you can kind of finish it all up once you have all the techniques. And also this class will be available as a replay. I believe tomorrow it'll be available to watch again.
Yes,
so,
that's true. So
yeah,
right?
Well,
yeah. So great suggestion about, doing the half of the page if you feel a little that the pace is a little quick today. But once again, we want to reassure you we will continue to record till the Protea is completely painted. And in 24 hours, it'll be available on michaels.com /classes, and then it'll appear on their Michaels YouTube page as well.
All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pull this sketch out of frame. I'm sorry if you were using it. Hopefully you can pull it up on your computer. But I'm going to pull up the painting I did yesterday, just so I can kind of use that as my reference today. And I want you to be able to use it as your reference as well. So what I'm doing now is I'm just getting a watery mixture of alizarin crimson going on my palette. I always like to mix on my palette before I bring it to the paper. I kind of get my recipe right. I want to make sure it's the right consistency and the right color, the right opacity, which means just how transparent it is. So this is going to be a very light, watery layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cover all of the upper parts of the leaves, or sorry, not the leaves, the petals and the center stamen. I'm using my size 6 round brush because the larger brush I have covers more ground, covers more paper more quickly. So I want to cover this quickly. And just be mindful as you're working down here, just which ones are leaves, which ones are petals. It's not going to be the biggest deal if you make a mistake here. You can just blot it with a paper towel. And use your nice points there. If you're kind of intimidated by these, trying to get in all these little crevices here, you can use a smaller brush. If you use a smaller brush, you have a little more control. You're going to make less mistakes if you're using a smaller brush. Also today, I decided to open my studio window today. So I'm sitting right next to my open window and I hear just all the quails in the neighborhood are going about their business, chirping, and they're so cute. I don't know if you guys can hear them, but I like to hear the birds. We've had a couple of really cloudy days in New Mexico, or in Albuquerque where I live, and I don't like it. We're used to 300 days of sunshine a year, so even our winters are very sunny, but it's been a little bit, makes me kind of feel sort of blue to have so much cloudy days. So I think this whole week is going to be kind of cloudy too. So if I have the birds chirping, it makes me happy.
There you go. We've had extraordinary, I mean, I'm from New Jersey, and we have had some extraordinary mild weather in the
Oh,
50s,
really?
40s and 50s. For January is,
It's usually a lot colder, they're saying.
oh,
Right.
it can be in the teens. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
snow
Yeah.
usually, so I'll take it, so at
Yeah.
least people can get out. Like I said, great,
Hmm.
great that we have the opportunity to go out. I know a lot of us are in our homes and we're quarantining and, we're being really mindful about social distancing and all that things, but go out and enjoy the outdoors.
Oh, yeah.
This is a great release of stress. This is just, we want this to be really relaxing for you. So once I said, it's real simple. Michaels.com/classes is where the classes will reside. And then you could go check out the directory of all the other classes. If you haven't had other classes with Shalene, I encourage you to take a look. There's a lot of beautiful botanicals that she's created for us.
I'm like losing track of how many we've done now. I think like 6. I think this might be my 7th class.
Yeah, I believe
So,
so. And we
so
have like quite a few scheduled. You're on a steady course. Every month we'll have at least one or
yeah,
two.
I'm really enjoying them. At first it made me really nervous, but now I'm like, oh no, it's fun. I can do it. I just
Well,
have to not, I have to not look at how many people are in the class and just pretend it's just like
no, you
a
have
one-on-one.
it's right. We have a lovely group today, quite a big group, a robust group of people here. So we're happy
Yeah.
that we hope we're getting repeat artists that are joining us, but also that we have some new visitors, because that's
Yeah.
really, the great part about this. And Shalene, I know you're really active on your Instagram and you keep people aware. So I would encourage you to follow Shalene as well, because she's got some great artwork that she's posted on her website, on her Instagram. Pardon.
My Instagram, yeah. And I also added just this little thing here. So ShaleneLouise.com/subscribe. I want to let people know, like, if you like my classes, the best way to know when another one is coming out or when I'm scheduled is to just get on my artist newsletter. I usually share it on Instagram too, but just in case you really don't want to miss out, newsletter is the best place. All right, so I didn't even talk about what I'm doing here. So I'm mixing Viridian green and burnt sienna, okay? So it's a very kind of green, cool green, greenish blue color mixed with this beautiful orangey brown color. And it's kind of gonna give me this nice forest green. Depending which color you're heavier on is gonna determine the ultimate color you get. I'm kind of trying to make mine 50-50. I want it to be just right in between those two colors. And once you have a good mixture going, let's just start covering these leaves. So I'm going to just kind of avoid the ones that are right next to the petals because I don't want there to be any bleed between the pink and the green. So I'll paint those ones there in just a second, but we'll start over here. Sometimes it's a really cool look to have your colors bleed together. I actually really love that look in watercolor, but I don't love it enough to do it right now. So maybe another class one day. I like to have my paintings very, I just like to have some control and just work slowly. It kind of helps to create a more detailed end result. So that same technique, this technique is called wet on dry, okay? So we're using a wet brush on dry paper, and having a lot of water in your brush is going to help that color to move quickly. Using a larger brush is going to help you cover ground more quickly, as I said earlier. So typically, if you're using a lot of water and a larger brush, you do have less control. As I mentioned, it's easier to get into the little crevices and do finer work with a smaller brush. And also, if you've got a lot of water in your brush, the chances of making a mistake or for the color to go everywhere is a little higher. So
Shalene, the colors, could you just repeat? Pardon me, Shalene, I apologize for speaking over you, because we just got a couple people. Just to reiterate the colors that you blended together.
Yes. Yes, these two are Viridian green and burnt sienna.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll post it in the chat as well.
So yes, whenever I'm doing this technique, like a larger brush and a lot of water, it's usually when I'm covering a lot of space really quickly. If I was doing details right now, I'd be using smaller brush with less water. So hopefully that makes sense. So yes, if you're using a smaller brush here, smaller than what I'm using, you might find that your progress is a little bit slower, but that's also totally okay. Sometimes I like to use smaller brushes just because I find it to be very calming. I like to kind of work slowly sometimes because just the process is very, I don't know, it's fun, it's calming.
Shalene, another question, which is more about preferences, your
Mhm.
familiarity with our with the Cotman palette. Someone suggesting if they don't have Viridian green,
Mhm.
they one person say they'd like to use yellow ochre. What other? It just depends on if you want a cooler or a warmer appeal. But in
Mhm.
terms of getting this representation and reality
This
of how it
color.
looks, yeah, this is the
So
color.
like a different combo that might get you similar results. Is that kind of the question you think?
Yeah, I think that
Yeah. Yeah, I would
what other
try
color?
maybe I would try, and I'd have to experiment with a little bit to get the exact color, but off the top of my head, I would say maybe Winsor blue and burnt and yellow ochre. So
Right.
trying this one here, like a yellow ochre with a blue, might get you a similar color. You also could just use like whatever green you have on hand and maybe mix just a like a tiny bit of a brown color with it. Um, yeah, just experiment, mix stuff up, see what you like. But this definitely feels more like a forest green, which I feel like you have to have that warm blue color, if that makes sense. So it's earthy, but it's still kind of on the blue side, which is kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Right. It's a cool. I was
So,
just going to suggest because it's indicative of that type of flower. So we want it to be a
hmm
cooler palette. So those
yeah,
of you that are familiar with, color mixing, and you're really
yes,
using quite a bit of water to make it right now, like,
yeah,
so I think that's, and the larger brush is a technique that
hmm
we don't always show with you because you have very usually detailed
yes,
articles. So
yeah.
this is
Actually, I don't
our
even. It's
wheelhouse,
pretty rare.
yeah,
It's
which
pretty
is
rare
kind
that
of
I'll
nice.
even use
So
a size 6. Okay, so I'm gonna take a swig of water real quick. It's sparkling water, so it's very loud. Okay, so next we're going to move back to our petals. So let's see here. I'll start with, I'm going to keep my 6 brush. So I'm going to just grab some alizarin crimson. And I'm going to start at the very top. So this is a really strong mixture of alizarin crimson I got here. And I'm just rolling my brush, rolling the bristles in that color, get a ton of color in your bristles. And let's paint these top petals, okay? So these are going to be the inside of the petals. So we're not seeing the inside of the petals over here. We're seeing the front side. This is the only part of the flower where we're seeing the inner parts of the petals. So I want those to be a little bit darker, as you can see over here in the reference. So drop a lot of color there. If one trick to dropping a little bit extra color is to, instead of brushing it on, is to kind of blot it on your paper, and you'll find that you're able to leave a little bit extra color. So it's a very saturated pigment here.
So essentially, that was one of the questions that was
Mm-hmm.
on the chat. So you basically covered it. So it's just the saturation because we have a very simple palette of 3 colors today that we're using. And then for those of you that are joining us a little bit later, just selfish realize that this is being recorded. We're moving at a pretty quick pace because, but we're making good progress. It's 2:24, but
Yeah,
it's
we're
all
good.
recorded. We want you to relax and enjoy and just really take in this great experience with this painting of this Protea.
Okay, so that feels pretty good. So now I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to switch over to my size 3 brush. You don't have to use a 3 if you got a 4, 5. Should be fine. You probably don't want to use anything too small just because it'll make your it'll make your progress right here very slow if your brush is too small. But I'm just going to try it out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, it's a good way to describe this. I'm going to basically draw a little bit of color into the spots where it makes sense for there to be some shadow, okay? So I'm kind of just following these lines that I have drawn here. So this petal right here specifically, it makes sense that it would be just a little bit more in shadow because we have these two bigger petals overlapping it. And if your green is all dry, which mine is, hopefully yours is as well, you can come right up next to the green and drop some color right around those edges. And I'm going to just do like 5 or 6 petals at a time. So I drop the color and then in a minute, I'm going to smooth that color out. You want to be real careful there. That is kind of tricky. I need to have my hand steady to do that. And if I was using my larger brush, it would be a lot more difficult. Okay, so once I have that color dropped there, I'm going to switch brushes. So I'm going to switch back to my 6 round brush. So I just rinsed it in clean water. I don't know if you can tell. Well, cleanish. So I rinse it, then I blot it on my towel. So now it is just damp. And then I'm going to use that damp edge to gently smooth that color out, kind of up towards the top of these petals.
Shalene, this may be a good time once you've done a few of these to zoom it in a little bit so that
Yes, I
the
will.
group could see it, because that is a bit of a different technique that they can't really see from this vantage point.
I'm always grateful when you remind me to hold it up because I forget. So let me finish this section and I'll hold it up.
Sounds good.
So the less water in your brush, the more control you're going to have here, okay? So keep your brush damp but not sopping wet. And you're going to be able to just really nicely move that color around exactly how you want to. Once your brush has too much pigment in it, just rinse it off real quick. Keep it clean. And keep it just damp, not too wet. All right, so now let me hold it up for you. So you see how that technique just really nicely kind of feathers that color upwards into the tips of those petals. And I'm going to keep on moving and just do that same technique. I'm actually using the same brush. That's okay. This brush I'm using has a really nice point to it. So that end tip is super, super sharp. So I'm able to have a lot of detail. I'm able to do a little more detail, I should say. If your brush is kind of splayed at the end, if it kind of looks more like more like a mop, well, I'll show you my old one of my old brushes. See how it's all splayed out? That happens in time when you don't take care of them. And sometimes I'm really lazy. I'm not gonna lie. I should wash them every single time I use them, and sometimes I'm like, it's fine. But yeah, if you want your brushes to last for a long time, just rinse them after you use them in the sink. Water usually is plenty to clean your watercolor brush. I don't think you need to buy all the fancy soaps or anything like that personally. But just rinse it with water, make sure you get all the paint out, and then kind of flick it to a point so that it dries with that nice point, okay? All right. And I think I will, after I do this one right here, I will do that same technique again. So I'm just going to rinse my brush, blot it, and then smooth that color out. And you'll notice in my reference over here that these aren't like perfectly like dark to light on every single petal. They're a little bit splotchy and they're a little bit variegated and inconsistent, which is what Protea actually, that's what the petals really look like. So I'm trying not to do it too perfect. I'm okay with if the paint dries a little bit and I'm not able to like move it so that it's like this perfect gradient. I think it's kind of cool. Like right here, look at this spot right here. Like I kind of like how it goes from dark to light. Yeah, it doesn't have to be too perfect. So if you got some hard edges from where your paint is drying, I think that's cool. I think it's going to look just fine. I think this painting is more about the effect, and you definitely don't, nothing needs to be perfect here. All right, so I'm going to just do these last few petals. I think I just have 4 left here. And just getting a little more of this paint mixed on my palette really quick. So I want it to be a really dark mixture, a really pigmented mixture. So it's like 50% paint, 50% water, pretty dark. I'm going to drop some color using that technique I showed you up there, where I'm just blotting it. So I'm leaving a bunch of color down here in these little cracks and crevices. This part would probably be pretty dark because it's really in shadow. Yesterday when I was working on this, I had just squeezed this paint, this Viridian green, onto my palette, and I wasn't paying attention, but I totally got the side of, I got the side like I did right there. I got the whole side of my wrist just covered in wet paint, and then I accidentally smudged it everywhere. So it's better if your paint's dry, trust me. Or it's actually better just to not put your wrist in the palette. Let's just say that.
Well, job
If you can help
hazard, I
it.
guess, right?
Oh, there's a few of them.
I'm sure, but it's coming together
Dangerous.
nicely. It's coming together nicely. It's starting to take dimension. Looks really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, having those contrasts, so having the dark pink and the light pink is what gives paintings interest, that contrast. If it was all just kind of one shade of pink, it wouldn't be that interesting. It would look kind of flat. So the way we get that interest, that dimension, is to work with contrast, okay? Work with value differences. So dark value, light value. Same color though. Isn't that amazing how with one color you can get such a spectrum of different shades. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for the top part, the flower part. And actually, no, I'm going to do one more thing. So I'm going to grab some alizarin crimson, just get a little mixture going right here off to the side. And then I'm going to grab just a tiny bit of that Viridian green, which is kind of like a blue. And I'm just going to try something. I'm going to see if, all right, it's working good. So I kind of want like a purplish color, but since I don't have a true blue on today's class, I'm going to use just a little bit of that Viridian green. And it actually works pretty well. So then what I'm going to do is use that color. It's kind of like a desaturated alizarin crimson, like slightly purple. It's just slightly different than the rest of the flower, which is what I want. Just a little bit of a different hue. And then I want you to just drop that color in the center stamen area. And I'm doing just a wet on dry wash, moving that color quickly. And it's pretty subtle, right? It's just like a little bit more of a purple tone. Okay. So once you do that, we'll just let this dry, let this whole top flower dry. And then we're going to go back to our leaves. So let's see here. Let's just take a look at this one really quick. In my reference, you notice how it has a lot more dimension than it does over here. Because right now what we're seeing is just like flat color. Like we're not seeing any value differences. We're not seeing some of the leaves are a little bit darker, which makes it look like they're further away. Some look like they're closer to us. So I'm going to get a mixture going over here. Viridian green and burnt sienna. I'm going to stick with that 50-50 mix, but this mixture is going to have an even stronger depth of color. So even more paint in this mixture, okay? So very saturated. And as I mentioned, you always want to get your color ready over here on the palette. Make sure it's just what you want, and then bring it to your paper. Okay, so I have a ton of wonderful color here. Let me think here. I'm going to switch over to my smaller brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the left side because I'm right-handed. So I kind of want to make sure that if my wrist touches any of this, I'm not going to smudge anything. If you're left-handed, maybe do opposite. And what I'm going to do is just drop some color. And I'm going to try and maintain those little veins. You see how over here in the reference, you can still see the light spots where those veins are. If that's kind of tricky for you, if your hand feels a little bit unsteady, I would say don't even worry about it. Just color over all of it. It's still going to look amazing. But yeah, I like to try and maintain those veins when I can. One other thing you could do is you could just paint all of your leaves and then come back later and do a dark vein instead of a light vein. So just using darker paint later to create those veins.
Shalene, just one other thing, just to reiterate, the darker leaves, can you just tell us the colors that you...
Yes, so it's the same mixture I did earlier, but it's just a deeper, darker, stronger saturation. It's Viridian green and burnt sienna. Okay. And like we were saying earlier, you could use Winsor blue or ultramarine blue mixed with some yellow, and you might get a similar color. You could use a color called, I have a color on my professional series palettes, mix of colors that I have. I have one called Periline green, which I really love. There's so many good ones. There's so many great green tones. I have way too many green colors. It's my favorite. All right, so I'm going to make this petal that I'm working on right here a little bit lighter. So the way I'm going to make it lighter is just using a little bit more water in my brush. That way it's not too dark. I want to mess with the darks and lights here, so I want some leaves to be a little darker than others. Keep it interesting. We don't want it all to be the same. Let's see, how about this leaf right here?
Actually, once you've finished another one of the leaves, because you're creating this illusion of that vein by putting the darker color, the more saturated color on the leaf. So if you could just pull that up to the camera for a closer look.
Yes. Yes. Let me paint just this one and I'll pull it right up for you. And then you're going to see how imperfect it really is. It's very, it's more of an impression. And also I was going to say, if you find that you accidentally goof up and you cover a vein and you didn't mean to, it's all good. It's still going to look amazing. But just wherever you can, if you can be mindful of that, and just try and keep that part light if you can. It's a little tricky. I understand that, but using a smaller brush there is going to be really helpful. I'm using the size 3 round. Look at that! You guys see that sliver of sunlight? It's going to be gone in a second. Watch. All right, I'm using up this color really fast, so I got to keep mixing more. Something that's kind of cool about when you just are mixing colors versus just using Perylene green or whatever sap green. One thing about that is you'll notice that, and it's easy for me to tell looking at my painting right now, but it might be harder for you. But this one is really, this one looks a little cooler and these ones look a little more desaturated, at least from my perspective. And that's because my mixture over here is inconsistent, but personally, I actually really like that. I like for my paintings to not just be like one color. I like for there to be a mixture. And when you mix colors, that's what happens naturally.
I think one of the other things that you're giving our class lots of other color options. But like I said, we're focusing on the palette that we presented to you as Viridian green, and you're just doing it with a more saturated color. As far as, I know before you mentioned about the actual flower, that was alizarin crimson.
Purely,
right?
just alizarin crimson. Yep.
So
yep, this is all alizarin crimson, except that center has alizarin crimson with a tiny bit of Viridian
that's right.
green.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that almost gave it that little bit of that hue that had a purple tinge to it, I think is what you referred to it last. So
yeah.
Yes. And I have to commend everyone that's on the chat. Everyone has been so responsive and cooperative and giving everybody tips, techniques, and just some hints. So thank you so much for being such an engaging class.
Cool. I'm not able to read the chat as I'm working on this, so if you guys want to send me any photos of your painting, or if you have any comments for me, just send it to you can just send it to my email or my direct messages. I always love to see your end results, so don't be shy. It makes my day. It really does. And I'm always so impressed with the work you guys do. Seriously impressed. I'm like, oh, I guess what I'm doing is so easy because everybody's doing a great job.
I have to commend you on that, but I'm looking at the chat and I'm looking at the gallery and I'm starting to see there's definitely a bunch of diversity that we have with us today. I even see some younger attendees, which is fantastic.
Aww, I love that.
Yeah, so I feel that you've been very encouraging and it's very attainable for many skill levels. I mean, we put down that these are beginner classes, but like I said, you work at your own pace. That's what having the luxury of going back to the video, it provides you with a reference. So we're really fortunate to have Michael's support this program. And, like I said, it's been fantastic to see all the great responses, and these creations are just spectacular. We encourage you to post for us, and we want to see them and share with us, because this is really a testament to both Shalene and to your capabilities, your creativity, actually.
Oh, well, thank you. All right, so let me see here. How are we doing on time? Got about a little over 15 minutes. I think we're good. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to drop some color up here on some of these top leaves. And if you just are able to keep your wrist on the table, you might find that your hand feels a little more steady. It's hard for me if I ever have to make my hand float in the air while I'm painting. Oof, that's tricky. So I always try and make sure to accommodate myself so that my wrist can stay on the dry part of the paper. And I want this one to be really dark, so I'm going to mix a little more color here. Just keep that mixture going. And yeah, it's definitely hard to really see it in the Zoom, but I definitely am finding that my colors here are it's very inconsistent, which is awesome. Some leaves look a little more warm, some look a little bit more cool. So if you're a mixture, if you have to keep mixing it like I'm doing, you'll find that your colors are probably going to always look a little bit different. But that's, yeah, I love that. That's part of the beauty and charm of painting versus doing like maybe digital art, is it's always going to have that human touch, the imperfect human touch, which I love.
Actually, and another interesting question. So someone's saying, how do you determine which leaves you want to make darker or lighter? I think that's
Yeah,
just more a little bit
great
of your
question.
intuition, but would love to hear that. What you
Yeah, great question. So for this one, I'm definitely trying to make the ones that are behind other leaves look darker. So you notice that this one back here, this one back here, definitely these two back here, a little darker. Some of the closer ones, the ones that look like they would naturally be closer to us as the viewer, I want to make those a little bit lighter. And you can also just make parts of your leaf a little darker. So watch, if I drop a little bit of dark color right here, where it makes sense, right? Because that's going to be kind of in shadow behind these two leaves.
you just said it, the shadows, because I think that's what my takeaway was
Yeah,
from one of your
shadow.
other classes was that shadowing effect. And
Mhm.
you're trying to create what you would see in nature. But like I said, this is all a work in progress. And you could always, great thing about watercolors, you could always go back and touch it up.
Yes, you definitely can. And one note on that, on watercolor, I always like to work light to dark. I mean, it's kind of, that's how you work in watercolor. You do light layers and then you gradually go darker, because watercolor is not like oil or acrylic or even gouache, where you can go back and add light color later. Even if you have white watercolor, you're going to find that you can't actually lighten it up once you paint really dark colors. So I always just build my color gradually, start light, and then slowly go darker and darker and darker. I like to have very dark colors in my paintings, but usually that's after like 2 or 3 layers of color. So I want that one to be a little bit darker. Sometimes it is a little random. Like that one maybe could be light, but I don't know. This one, this right here, because this is behind another leaf, I'll make this one a little bit darker. I'm glad to see I'm doing okay on time. This one was, I was not sure. Some of you guys who were on my email list saw that I was like, I'm going to try my best.
We're doing nicely. It's
Doing good.
2:48. So just to pace ourselves, 2:48. Once again, it's going to be recorded, as I've told you many times. We will be able to, it will be shared with you on the Michaels website at michaels.com/classes in about 24 hours. One other thing I'm going to encourage you to do is a survey that you'll get in about 24 to 48 hours after this class. For those of you that are participating, we'd love to hear your feedback. I'm getting really favorable replies on the chat, so thank you for that. But it helps us curate other classes. So Shalene's style of painting, obviously very much botanical. So it's just, this is what her forte is, and we're happy to bring that to you week after week, and we seem to be getting really good replies. So we're going to keep delivering. And Shalene's got great content coming ahead. So on February 19th, we have a stargazer lily that she'll be painting.
I'll pull it in.
I'm going to have her right now give you a sneak peek. And this is going to be on our new time slot. And that's on Friday, the 19th at noon Central Time. So I'll put that in the chat. And then the next class, which is on our Tuesday routine, our Tuesday time slot, is going to be an orange blossom. That is on February 23rd at 1 o'clock Central Time as well. So, and that one is, I love all the flowers that you created, but I have a preference for that little orange blossom.
Oh, yes. Oh, actually, I have that here too.
Yeah. So why don't you share? Look how great that looks.
There you go.
Yeah. Love it.
That's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that.
Happy thoughts, positive vibes. So we like all those colorful creations. So
that one will be easy to do in an hour. I think it will be at least. Okay, so I'm going to, one more detail. This bottom stem needs a dark edge just on the left side. And I'm actually feeling pretty happy with my leaves. So I'm gonna stop there for my leaves. And I'm going to wrap up the top part, so the protea, the petals and the stamen. So let's see here. Let's get a mixture. I'm gonna use my larger brush, my size 6. I'm gonna get a lot of alizarin crimson mixed here. Get that color moving. I have my ceiling fan on, so my paint's drying super fast today. But get that paint going and then just grab a tiny bit of ultra Viridian green. Put it off to the side because we don't want to just mix it right in the middle. You might get a color you don't want. So just mix it over here. And let's get that nice kind of purplish color going again. Definitely way heavier on the alizarin crimson, okay? I just want like a touch of Viridian green. Not a 50-50 mix, or else you're just gonna have gray. So once you have a good amount of that color going, let's go ahead and we're gonna do two things. We're gonna drop color into those little crevices again, because I just want it to be a little darker. As you can see over here, I was able to get a little bit of a darker color, so I'm gonna try and get there before our class is over. So what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna drop the color all over, and then I'm going to come back and smooth it out. I'm using my size 6 brush. I'm doing this a little bit loosely. I'm not actually doing this with a lot of detail and finesse. I'm just kind of dropping it maybe to the right and left down in that little crevice there. Really dark color down in here. So our petals ended up not being purely alizarin crimson at the very end, because I can't help myself. I can't ever just paint something one color. I have to like add something else, add something fun. All right, I'm gonna drop more color back in here to these top petals, just a little bit. Actually, I'm liking how that looks even without smoothing it out. I feel like that looks really cool. But just I'm gonna do just a tiny bit. So blotting that brush, maybe just smooth out a few spots and pull that color up and out just a little bit. As I mentioned, Protea petals are not super smooth. You'll usually see some variegation, a little bit blotchy, a little bit, there's a better word for it, but we'll just say variegated. So that kind of lends itself to that more loose style. So it's not super perfect. I'm not like trying to get rid of all the hard water lines. And I gotta say, for once, I actually like this one better than my reference photo. A lot of times I end up after the class, I'm like, maybe I like my first one better, but I actually do like this one a little bit more. I'm not really sure. I think I like how the alizarin crimson is a little bit more saturated. It feels a little bit more strong, bright pink, whereas this one felt a little bit, maybe I used a little bit too much Viridian green in these petals here. It's still nice, just maybe a little more desaturated. Okay, and the last thing I'll do here is I'm going to get a mixture over here. This is alizarin crimson and Viridian, heavier on the alizarin crimson, but get that quote unquote purple color mixed. And then let's switch brushes. I'm going to switch to my size 3. Get that purplish mixed going. And then let's, starting at the very top here, let's just draw some little lines that are kind of all reaching towards the top point. So kind of starting right up at the top, and just draw some really wispy lines reaching downward. Using your smaller brush, you're going to be able to get some finer lines here. It's a pretty watery mixture, so it's not super dark, not too dark. Oops. Those ones feel a little bit dark, so I'm just going to blot them with my paper towel. Okay, and then I'm going to just grab a little bit more and just, as that top part is drying, just do another little layer. Layer on a few more of these little wispy lines.
It's really coming together nicely. One of the other things that I did, and Felicia, and we have another moderator joining us as well, sending you some links. I put them out in the chat. I would encourage you to go on the Michaels website under classes, and the bookings are there for you to sign up for the Stargazer and the Orange Blossom. But any other classes that you have seen or participated in, if you go to the YouTube channel, there's usually a see more at the bottom, and those are where all the downloadable sketches are available for you for reference. If you haven't booked one of Shalene's classes, but if you want to go and paint along, that's also available to you. So you're doing nicely. We're closing in. It's 2:57. I have to say we had a great class today, a wonderful, engaging, and really very informative class. You know, like lots of good chatter that people are exchanging great things for. We encourage you to, as we said earlier, to post your creations at #MakeItWithMichaels, #MichaelsClasses. Also, Shalene, why don't you take it from there and encourage people to your Instagram?
Yes, you guys can follow me at Shalene Louise. And yeah, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll make sure to always keep you in the loop about classes that I'm doing through Michaels. And also, if we got a couple minutes here, would you guys mind if you want to? Can you share your? I want to see the photos.
See what everyone's doing.
Yeah, can you hold them up for me so I can see it? And I'm pulling up the grid view. Oh, look at that!
That's fantastic.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, look at that.
Those look amazing.
Wow. Look at
I'm scrolling through here. I'm looking through. There's 17 pages. Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
There's so many of you.
Well, I'm happy that we got done in enough time that we were able to showcase everybody's pictures. Please, they look fantastic.
They sure do. I'm impressed.
They really do. This is a really talented group we have today, and I'm glad that everybody was following along. And we made it in the allotted time.
I know.
And you did it, and I'm happy. And we gave some really good information out to everyone. And as I said, just participate in the survey because it really helps us, keeps everybody encouraged, and we get to curate some more classes for you when we get that great feedback. And as we said, these classes are of all different skill levels, but we can see how talented the group is. So delighted that you're enjoying it, and stay tuned, go forward with us as we offer more classes for you, particularly on Tuesdays. This is our time slot. So I think that'll be it for us for today. And if you want to sign off, Shalene, I want to thank everybody for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I enjoyed this one so much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your sweet comments. Shout out to Emery. I see you, girl. I'll see you guys at the next class, okay?